So, today I'm going to be discussing why I think Godzilla Jr. is Godzilla Final Wars. Now we'll be touching on Godzilla Jr. also possibly being Godzilla 2000, but first argument, at the end of Godzilla vs. Destroy, we get this shot. Now before I continue, I will say I've seen GojiFan1993 video on this, and I will be addressing it again in the video. But he says, I think they just did it to show that Godzilla will never go away. Now to me that makes sense, but there's enough evidence to prove otherwise. Video link in the description. But this shot can also be seen at the end of the opening scene of Godzilla Final Wars, where it is shown going back and forth with this shot. Now call me crazy, but these shots look decently similar in my own opinion. But now back to GojiFan1993's video. He says at the end of Godzilla vs. Mothra, Mothra flies into space to destroy a meteor set to hit Earth in 1999. So maybe it's Orga. But Space Godzilla's origins say Mothra carried Godzilla's cells into space, which created Space Godzilla. So maybe the meteor had something to do with that. I mean, it makes as much sense as the actual origin story. So perhaps Mothra failed and the meteor came down even quicker than calculated the Space Godzilla. It would be still within the same series so it could work instead of branching off into a whole other series. And look at this photo right here for the Heisei series. Now, someone may have photoshopped this, but that is definitely Godzilla Final Wars on the front. So maybe the Heisei are connected to the 50th anniversary. So let's talk about the meteor in Godzilla Final Wars. Possibly Mothra failed to stop the meteor, but slowed it down. But Mothra's in the movie. Maybe she left a larva behind in case she failed. But maybe she failed and the Exilians slowed down the meteor? I mean, if they can speed it up, I'm almost positive they can slow it down. So that may have delayed the meteor striking Earth. But enough of the topic, let's get into how Godzilla Jr. looks. Now in black and white, which monster does he resemble the most? The Godzillasaurus. Well, if the Godzillasaurus turns into Godzilla, which monster does he turn into? This one. Now on to colors. Godzilla Jr. and Godzilla 2000 are green, but since Godzilla turns into this Heisei at the end of Godzilla vs. Destroy, he and Godzilla Final Wars are gray. Next, we're going off of spine shape, whether curved or pointed. Well, I think we have a clear winner for this round. Final Wars wins via landslide. For our final round, we'll be going off of this height chart. So we were going to be looking at this chart. Now the bottom half of the chart, very left of the chart, and very right of the chart does not matter. So let's look at our main stars. Now Godzilla Jr. is about half the size of the Goji on the chart. Who else on the chart is that size? Zilla! Who is the size of Zilla? Godzilla 2000. But don't forget Godzilla Jr. still turns into this Godzilla by the end. And guess which Godzilla is as tall as this one? Godzilla Final Wars. Now some random points. At the beginning of Final Wars, you'll get this shot, which looks similar to this end shot at the end of Godzilla Destroyer. In Godzilla Final Wars, you see a kid playing with Godzilla toys, of which include Space Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mecha King Ghidorah, and later in the credits, Biollante. All of these monsters were in Heisei series. Next on random points, the Godzilla Jr. and Godzilla Final Wars suits have only been in one movie each. I'll get back to these suits momentarily. Godzilla Jr. has a clear backstory and place in the timeline, whereas Godzilla Final Wars just throws you right into the action with no backstory or clear idea of where in the timeline it takes place. Back to suits, Godzilla 2000 suit was in two Godzilla films, Godzilla 2000 and Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, but the movies aren't connected by the same timeline, which I'll get into momentarily. But even if Godzilla Jr. is Godzilla 2000, he'd be in Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, which has absolutely nothing to do with Godzilla 2000 or the Heisei series. But then why would they still use a suit? Well, because it's not Godzilla Jr. And now, the moment to behold, the number one reason Godzilla Jr. cannot be Godzilla 2000, the timelines. For this, I will be showing the timelines for the films in the following order. First, Godzilla Final Wars, next Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, then Godzilla 2000, and lastly, the entire Heisei series. First up is Godzilla Final Wars, and you may be noticing it's quite empty. And well, that's because its timeline is never explained. So honestly, anything could have happened, but all we know is that it takes place in the future. Next is Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, which goes as follows. In 1954, Godzilla attacked Tokyo, but wasn't killed by the Oxygen Destroyer because it wasn't invented. He then attacks Osaka in 1966 and then kills a character that was apparently important in 1996, before surviving a black hole in 2000/2001 because he's a complete boss. For Godzilla 2000, only two important things happen. He was killed like in the first movie in 1954 by the Oxygen Destroyer, and then he appears in 1999/2000 to fight Orga. Now the fun one, the Heisei series, and this one is noticeably leaving out some films, but they only happened after the time travelers went back in time to kill Godzilla, starting a whole new branch of the timeline where Godzilla doesn't even attack Japan in 1954. So he was never killed by the Oxygen Destroyer because he's not alive, and which later in the series creates a major plot hole. But another Godzilla emerges and finishes the Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah movie. I'll explain the plot hole in another video another time. But Godzilla Jr. is only seen after the time travelers screw with the timeline after Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in the final three movies of the Heisei series, as Baby Godzilla, Little Godzilla, and then Godzilla Jr. But honestly, Godzilla Jr. isn't neither Godzilla 2000 or Final Wars, because for it to be Godzilla Jr., the information has to add up perfectly, but it doesn't for either. Though Godzilla Final Wars has the better chance of being Godzilla Jr., the directors of Godzilla Final Wars obviously only wanted the movie to be fun and not focus on how it ties in with the other films. But Godzilla Jr. already died, so he could be in neither of them. And as for this image, it was only the ghost of the king, Godzilla. Thanks for watching.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.